Wednesday night saw the debut of AEW Dynamite. How good was it? It was pretty good. Let's get into it. This is All Elite Review. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to today's kind of special edition of All Elite Review. This was supposed to come out on Friday, but I was a dummy and forgot to turn the microphone on when I was recording the footage, and so I wasted about an hour and a half of footage. So I'm having to do this review over again, which really sucks. But every cloud has a silver lining, because there's some things that kind of came out recently that I'm now able to talk about. So AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite, October the 2nd. It definitely had its ups and downs, and no, I'm not talking about, the Simon Miller kind. But honestly, it was a pretty damn good show. It actually left me wanting more. Those 2 hours just felt like they just flew right on by. So, honestly, I can't wait for the Boston show in a couple of days on this coming Wednesday to see what happens. Also, Cody announced on his Twitter that they have a new program that they're going to have on their YouTube channel, the All Elite Wrestling YouTube channel, called All Elite Wrestling Dark, which showcases the dark matches that took place on the Dynamite show, which I think is pretty freaking cool, because now we can actually watch those matches. So I actually had their results on here, and I actually went over those results on the original recording of this review. But since now we're going to be getting a chance to watch it on Tuesday nights now, apparently, I'm going to hold off on doing that until next week's All Elite Review. So there's that. But there's a lot more to unpack from this edition of Wednesday Night Dynamite, so let's go ahead and get into it. The announced crowd was over 14,000 people. It's like, holy shit, that's a lot of freaking people. And they were doing these wide shots of the arena, and you could see that that place was jam-packed. So it's like 14,000 people is not exactly outside the realm of possibility. Another surprise that happened was the fact that the commentary team, comprised of good old JR, of course, Excalibur, and Tony Schiavone. That was a bit of a surprise, and it was also pretty cool for me, because seeing the two lead announcers for WCW Monday Nitro and Monday Night Raw during, the Monday Night Wars, that's pretty freaking cool in my opinion. And honestly, Tony Schiavone sounds like he hasn't missed a beat. So let's go ahead and get into the matches real quick. There were 5 matches in total on the television show, not counting the 4 dark matches that also took place. So let's go ahead and get into it. Get Cody against Sammy Guevara to start the show. Huge pop for Cody when he came out. Match starts. Had some decent mat wrestling, although there was a couple of sort of botches. Like Sammy Guevara, when he did that somersault over Cody, he nearly landed on top of him. It looked like they were trying to go for roll-up pinfalls, but couldn't quite get him. I think there was definitely a little bit of nerves. Sammy showed a bit of his cockiness when he spun around, and he was like, "Yeah, come on." Guevara does a backflip over Cody as he runs underneath him, turns it into a drop kick, and then he also hits a moonsault. And after slapping Cody, Cody comes back with a boot and then does a lay down uppercut. Then Cody hits a power slam. Then he also locks in the figure 4 leg lock to a bunch of woos. But Guevara makes it to the ropes. Cody hits the thrusting arm breaker and then hits a stalling front suplex. Basically held him up there for a little bit and then hit a front suplex. Guevara with a nice looking back roundhouse kick. That looked pretty good. But then Cody hit a springboard cutter for a 2 count. Guevara hit a leaping enziguri and then hit his own springboard cutter for a 2 count. Guevara hit a running shoulder block, but then Cody counters with a bicycle kick. And then goes for a tope suicida, but Guevara pulls Brandy, who was out at ringside, into Cody's path. And Brandy actually looked like she hit her head on the guardrail when she went down. Fortunately, it did look like she got back up, though. But that elicited asshole chants from the crowd. So, there was that. Guevara does a double backflip. Oh, actually, Guevara went to the top rope, went for a top rope moonsault. Cody moved out of the way. So Guevara just turned it into a backflip. Went for another backflip moonsault, but Cody rolled out of the way again. And then Guevara ran into a ground shooting star press for a 2 count. Cody hit a drop toe hold on Guevara, which sent him into the middle rope. Cody distracted the referee, allowing Brandy to hit Guevara with her shoe. And then Cody hit a disaster kick for a 2 count. And then Cody put Guevara up on the top rope and hit an inverted superplex. I love that move. It looks so nice. For a 2 count. And then he tries to go for Din's Fire, but which is his version of the Vertebreaker. But Guevara counters out of it. Cody hits a back elbow, tries to go to the top rope, but Guevara leaps up and hits an avalanche Spanish fly for a 2 count. And then Guevara tries to go for the shooting star press, but Cody counters by putting his knees up and then putting him into the small package for the 3 count and the win. So before this match, they had a basically like a video package chronicling each wrestler's journey to AEW. And Cody saying that if he would have lost this match, he probably would have lost his opportunity at the world title at Full Gear against Chris Jericho. Of course, he did not, so he maintains his number 1 status. And of course, he maintained his status on my singles rankings, too. Of course, there's another guy who's at the number 1 rank right now. And he's one of 2 guys who I think have a legitimate case to make to be a part of the first ever defense of the championship in Philadelphia in a couple weeks. More on that later. This match was awesome. I mean, other than a few botches at the beginning, I mean, this was a nice flowing match. I give it 4 stars out of 5. Chris Jericho attacks Cody after the match, for obvious reasons. And then they went to commercial and actually went to picture-in-picture, which I thought was pretty cool. And it's like, yeah, that kind of reminds me of what NASCAR and IndyCar do now. So I thought that was pretty cool. This next match was not so cool. Brandon Cutler versus MJF. MJF on the mic, of course, was gold for the most part. And of course, he was getting the asshole chance. And as a mega heel, if you're getting the asshole chance, you're probably creaming your pants. You know, you probably came in your pants, you know. Because that's what you want as a heel. You want to get those asshole chants. There wasn't much to this match. It only lasted about 3 minutes. Cutler hit a slingshot roll up for a 2 count, which didn't look that good. MJF with an eye rake. MJF sends Cutler into the ring post. And then a hammerlock body slam. He was working on his left arm. Cutler hit a tope suicida, which resulted in him going into mounted punches right away. And then at this point, I don't know if he hurt his knee on the tope suicida or if this was planned or if this was just a factor of the top rope being a little bit slippery. But he slipped off the top rope, and it looked like he tweaked his left knee, or either that, or it looked like his left knee buckled while on the top rope, which resulted in him slipping off. I'm not really sure on that, but MJF. But he after he slipped off the top rope, he actually went towards MJF. MJF pulled the referee into him to kind of like a human shield, and then pushed him away and hit him with like an elbow strike, which allowed MJF to apply the Salt of the Earth Fujiwara armbar for the submission win on the arm that he had been working on. So hey, look at that, ring psychology. So MJF with the quick submission win, and that maintains his #1 status, because he's actually tied for Cody atop of my individual rankings. This match was not good whatsoever. It ended way too quickly for my taste. I give it 1.75 out of 5 stars. Then there was a bit of a lull in the action. There was a bit of an intermission. Angelico and Jack Evans came out to talk some trash to the actors of Jay and Silent Bob. Basically out there promoting their new Jay and Silent Bob reboot. Private Party makes an appearance and basically gets Angelico and Jack Evans to back off. Those two teams were actually in one of the dark matches, which we'll actually see on Tuesday night. So I'll be covering that next week. SCU does this. There's this video package next of SCU, in which Scorpio Sky was dressed as Barack Obama, and Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian were dressed as his Secret Service agents, and I thought that was pretty funny. And then they came out and did an interview with Tony Schiavone on the ramp, where they were basically selecting which two would represent SCU in the tag team title tournament. And Scorpio Sky basically said, I need to step aside and let experience take over. So Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian will be the two wrestlers representing SCU in the tag team title tournament. And then the Lucha Brothers come out and confront SCU. Ray Phoenix basically said, we are the best tag team in the universe. And then, of course, Pentagon Jr. did his zero fear hand signals. SCU shouted, SCU! And then Pentagon Jr. took a swig from a water bottle and spit it in Christopher Daniels' face. That was pretty funny. Although I'd be a little careful about doing that if you have like anything contagious, because that could spread to everybody who water that touched. But I'm pretty sure they checked for that beforehand. And this resulted in both sides starting to attack each other, so I honestly thought that was pretty funny. Then we get the match that we probably should have gotten at Double or Nothing, but of course circumstances kind of dictated otherwise. But now they get this match here on Wednesday Night Dynamite. Hangman Adam Page against Pac. This was a decent match that honestly probably should have been a lot better. But Pac slowed this match down way too much in the middle portion, especially when they went to commercial. It just got way too damn slow for my taste. Both started trading forearm shots. Pac does some spinning back kicks to the stomach. Paige hits a big boot. And then Pac hits a bicycle kick. And then Paige hits a discus lariat. So basically just the hard-hitting, attacks that they're doing. Paige sends Pac into the barriers a couple times and hits a tope suicida, and then he hits a fallaway slam, which he transitions then into a shooting star press, a ground shooting star press for a 2 count. Pac hangs Paige over the top rope, and then Pac hits an Acai moonsault to the outside, and this was one of those cases where the top rope may have been a little bit slippery, because Pac does a 450 splash, and he doesn't get quite enough rotation on it, and he nearly lands on his knees, and the splash doesn't really have that much impact, and only gets a 2 count. The Acai moonsault beforehand was also indicative of this, because even though the moonsault still looked good, You can see in the slow motion replay shot that his left foot actually slipped off the rope. So that could have ended a lot worse than it should have. Or it could have ended a lot worse than it did. Pac hits a running drop kick in the corner. And then Pac climbs to the top turnbuckle. But Paige hits a super kick. And then Paige takes advantage of that by hitting an avalanche fallaway slam. Paige with a running drop kick, and then picks him up like he's going for the fallaway slam again, but then kind of throws him up and turns it into a cutter for a 2 count. That was pretty cool. Pac hits the snake eyes, and then he sends Paige into the post. Pac hits a missile shotgun drop kick and kips up afterwards. So he still does like the flippy shit, but he because he's the big heel, he's invoked a more slower paced type of deal, which I don't really like because it slowed this match down way too much. Pac keeps hitting straight kicks to the face, but then Paige counters with a Farouk spinebuster, and then he hits a roaring elbow and a pop-up powerbomb for a 2 count. At this point, it looks like Pac is bleeding a little bit from his right eye, probably from the roaring elbow. Paige hits a moonsault to the outside and then goes for the buckshot lariat, but Pac ducks under it, goes behind. Then Paige switches around, goes behind, nearly pushes him into the referee, and while the referee's distracted, Pac hits a mule kick right in the jewels. And then the referee notices that something was up there, but Pac is like, He's like, what are you doing? I didn't do anything. What you looking at? You know, it was one of those deals. Then Pac rolls Paige over to the corner, where he hits, as a face he calls the red arrow, or as a heel he calls the black arrow. Either way you call it, either name you call it, the corkscrew shooting star press is one of the most awesome moves, in my opinion. It looks nice, and you know, you can imagine how difficult it is to do a regular shooting star press where you have to do a backflip while going forward. Now imagine trying to add a full twist to that. And he does it to perfection. He hit the black arrow to the back of Paige, and then he locks him in. The brutalizer, which is the rings of Saturn with like a little neck clutch. And he gets the technical submission win, because while Paige didn't tap out, he passed out, so it's considered a technical submission, and Pac gets the victory. So 2 matches in AEW, and he has beaten Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page, who are basically a huge part of being the Elite. So that's 2 big wins for him, and him along with MJF have quite the resume at this point when you look at their win-loss records. They have and considering where they are in the rankings at the moment, in my rankings anyway, they have a pretty strong case to contend for Chris Jericho's AEW Championship in Philadelphia. And yes, while that might be heel versus heel, AEW has said that they want more of a sports feel to it, and not necessarily just heel versus face, you know what I mean? So, the perfect scenario in this case, in my opinion, for this coming show in Boston would be MJF versus Pac, and the winner gets to go to Philadelphia to face Chris Jericho, because based on how many points they have in the rankings, if MJF wins, because MJF is still ahead of Pac in the rankings, if he wins, it's obvious. If Pac wins, he'll actually have 1 more point than MJF, because you lose 2 points for a loss and you gain 3 points for a win. So based on that, Pac would be ahead of MJF in the rankings. And of course, Cody, he's tied for the number 1 spot right now, so he's going to, you know, go to Full Gear as the challenger for the championship regardless. You know, and I have a little bit of leeway where it's in my rankings, where if you're in the top 5 in the rankings, in the singles rankings anyway, then you have a legitimate claim to a challenge for the AEW World Championship. So that's how I look at it. So I think MJF versus Pac, I think would be a pretty good match, honestly, for Boston. And, the perfect number one contenders match to determine who will get to be the first challenger to Chris Jericho's AEW Championship when they do the first title defense of the Men's World Championship in Philadelphia. I'm going to be talking more about that show in a little bit after we do the review. But speaking of championships, the next match was for the AEW Women's World Championship. We were going to crown the inaugural champion, Nyla Rose against Rijo. A lot of people definitely expected Nyla Rose to win for a couple of different reasons, because she is the monster of the women's division. But on top of that, there was also her backstory, being transgender and everything. But then you have Rijo, who's the big underdog here and massively over with the crowd. I mean, for someone who, has who's a Japanese professional wrestler, a Joshi wrestler in that case, she's only 22 years old, and yet she's been in the wrestling business for 13 years. She started wrestling professionally at the age of 9, if you can believe that. So she's been in the business for 13 years, so she has more than paid her dues, in my opinion. So, highlights of this match, and there were actually quite a few of them. One second. Get myself a drink, because my throat's starting to go dry. There we go. So, highlights of this match. Nyla Rose ran at Rijo right at the beginning of the match. Rijo moves out of the way, hits a pair of drop kicks, and a head scissors takedown. Rose hits a shoulder block, and then hits a standing splash for a 2 count, which Rijo bridges out of. Rijo stomps her into the ground a little bit, then tries to go for a running double stomp, but Rose actually pushes Rijo off of her, and Rijo avoided serious injury here, I think, because when she got pushed off, she rolled off, and her face nearly smashed into Nyla Rose's right heel. And I noticed that. I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that could have knocked a couple teeth out. Then Rose does a snapmare into a spinal tap, which is basically a kick to the back. Of course, we saw Aja Kong do that, and that kick reverberated throughout the entire arena. But there's one thing you can say about Rijo. She can take a lot of punishment and she can dish it right back out, which is incredible for such a small woman such as her. She's 98 pounds soaking wet, if she's lucky, and she's going up against someone who's 2.5 times her body weight. So it definitely went into the David and Goliath matchup, and a couple of cases where Rijo tried to power Rose up but was failing. There was one point where she went behind and tried to go for a German suplex. That wasn't happening. When Rose had her in a wheelbarrow, looked like she tried to go for the victory roll, but Rose was like, nah, not happening. And there was actually a botch that happened later in this match that actually, I think, played into the match's advantage because of that aspect of Rijo can't lift Nyla Rose up. We'll get to that in a bit. Then Rose puts Rijo in the STF, but Rijo is able to get to the ropes. Rose hits a running back elbow, but then Rijo hits her with a running knee strike a couple times, which sends Rose to the outside. Rijo climbs up to the top rope, and here's the thing with this next spot, which was just crazy. Nyla Rose is out on the floor. Rijo climbs up to the top rope and tries to do a flying crossbody, but Rose catches her out of midair, and it was one hell of a catch. It's like she caught a freaking football for the touchdown. It's like, holy shit, that was pretty cool. And then walks around with her for a bit and then hits a pendulum backbreaker. Rose pulls out a chair and tries to hit Rijo with it, which would have resulted in a disqualification, which would have lost her the titles. That wasn't very smart, but the referee pulled it out of her hand. Rose sends Rijo into the barricade a couple times, then pulls out 3 more chairs, places them on the rampway, and then places Rijo on top of them. So I'm like, okay, what the hell are they going to do here? And then Nyla Rose tries to go for a swanton bomb off the apron, but Rijo rolls out of the way, and Rose hits nothing but chair. And I guarantee you that frickin' hurt. I mean, she sold it pretty well, but I'm pretty sure that also frickin' hurt for realsies. And then Rijo climbs up to the apron herself and does a coup de grace double stomp. I call it the coup de grace because that's Finn Balor's finisher, the flying double stomp to the outside. And then Rijo does the same thing in the ring to a bent over Nyla Rose in her back for a 2 count. And then Rijo applies like a crossface submission, and then she traps the arm, and it's like, oh, now it's a crippler crossface. But Rose was able to power out of it. Rijo hits a flying knee strike and then hits the victory roll into the double stomp. That's always been one of her best moves. And then she tries to go for what looks like a crucifix pin, but Rose counters it into a Samoan drop for a 2 count. And then we get the spot that we saw at Fyter Fest, where Nyla Rose does the suplex snake eyes and hangs Rijo over the top rope, and then does the flying knee strike off of the turnbuckle to the back of her opponent, which always looks really good. And she only got a 2 count out of that. Then she reapplies the STF once again, but can't get the submission. And here was the aforementioned botch that I was talking about. Nyla Rose tries to go for the Beast Bomb, which is a sit-out power bomb. As there are noises everywhere, I hope you can hear me at the moment. Rijo tries to back body drop Nyla Rose to counter the Beast Bomb, but she wasn't able to lift her up, and they nearly kind of stumble over. So, yeah, it didn't look good, to say the least. Hold on one second. Alright, sorry about that. But yeah, this botch actually kind of played into it a little bit later on, especially since Nyla played off of it, like she was laughing at Rijo for trying to pick her up and try to do a back body drop but failing to do so. It kind of, even though it was a botch, I think it actually enhanced the match a little bit, in my opinion, because it kind of gave that, you know, feeling of, wow, Rijo can't lift Nyla Rose up. And I think it enhanced what happened later on. Rijo tries to fight back with forearm shots, but then Rose hits a big boot. Rose tries to go for the Beast Bomb once more, but Rijo slips out of it. Kind of stumbles a little bit, but then regains her footing into the leg trap roll-up that we saw at Fyter Fest. And the crowd actually stirred up because it's like, oh my god, could this be the finish? And only got a 2 count. And there were a lot of people that thought it was actually a 3 count and were actively booing because it wasn't a 3 count. That's when you know the crowd is hooked on this match. And then Rose hits like a short little lariat and then picks Rijo up into a Death Valley driver. A lot of people thought, well, that might have been it. But she kind of had a lackadaisical cover on Rijo, which allowed Rijo to roll her right shoulder off for a 2 count. Yeah, it's not very often that, you know, a match like this, you know, kind of invokes some butterflies in the stomach, but that's what this match felt like. And then here was the part that I figured that they would go with, because there was, I don't know what it was that made me think that they were going to do a spot like this, where Nyla Rose starts to climb to the top rope, and then Rijo stops her, and then she basically does like an avalanche move. I had a feeling they were going to do something like that. I just didn't know what move they were going to go with. But Rijo starts raining forearm shots on Nyla Rose. And then she wraps Nyla's arm around her, and it's like, okay, what are they going to go for here? And I'll be the first one to admit, I've never actually seen this move performed off of the turnbuckle. Rijo does an avalanche Northern Lights suplex off of the middle rope, and where she finally lifts Nyla Rose up. And from the angle that they shot it at, it looked more like a Northern Lights driver, especially from how Nyla Rose bounced up off the ring. That looked pretty, it actually made the move look more devastating than it was. And it was kind of like, holy shit, she actually managed to pull it off, but only got a 2 count. And then Rijo tries to go for a double knee strike. Nyla Rose rolled out of the way, but Rijo sensed it coming and actually landed on her feet, adjusted it, and hits Nyla in the back with the double knees, then lines it up one more time, goes full speed ahead and hits Nyla Rose right in the face with the double knees one more time to get the 3 count and the win. Rose actually kicked out just after the 3 count, kind of make herself, they try to make her still look strong in defeat by kicking out just after the 3 count. But your winner and new AEW Women's World Champion is Rijo. Was this match a bit sloppy at times? Perhaps. But the crowd really bought into this match. And I think that's what raised the level of this match up a little bit more because of the stakes. From what I heard, it's probably not going to be comparable to the NXT women's title match between Shayna Baszler and Candice LeRae. God damn. But this match was still pretty good. And of course the stakes and the crowd being involved and the story that was being told, I think certainly played a part in this match and the quality of it. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. And here's the other thing about Rijo winning the championship. After the match, she was kind of, selling, the damage from the match and all that stuff. But the moment that she looks up and sees the referee handing the championship belt to her, which honestly looks a little bit smaller than I thought it'd be, but, it is what it is. But the moment she saw that belt being presented to her, and you could see it too, her expression instantly changed to like, oh my god, they actually chose me to be the inaugural AEW Women's World Champion. She's the very first, and there will never be another first. And here's the other thing too. This is not just, any old, wrestling women's championship. This is the AEW Women's World Championship. She is the world champion. And that is a really big deal in the professional wrestling world and also in the sports world. When you're the world champion, you are at the very top of your profession. And that's a big deal. And you can see the emotions on her face. 13 years of hard work has led to this. Even though she's only 22 years old, she has obviously put in the work. She's paid her dues. And now she's the AEW Women's World Champion. And, it honestly makes sense. She has the wrestling acumen. She can go in the ring. She has the look. Because let's be honest here, she is super attractive. So that's also pretty marketable too. She is mega over with the crowd. I mean, it made the most sense for AEW to put the belt on her, for her to be the first one. Now, as far as who should be her first challenger in Philadelphia, well, right now, according to my rankings, the clear-cut number 1 contender is Dr. Britt Baker. And honestly, a lot of people consider Britt Baker to be one of the faces of this division. that's going to take it to the next level going forward. And of course, her moveset is obviously inspired by her boyfriend Adam Cole. Where she uses the super kick. She also uses the Canadian Destroyer at All Out, and the finisher that she used at Double or Nothing was the Ushigoroshi, which was basically a brainbuster onto the knee, which is also known as the Adam Cole Special. But needless to say, Britt Baker can go in the ring, and right now, based on my rankings, she is the clear-cut number one contender. It's not even close at the moment. So, Britt Baker versus Rijo at the Philadelphia show, I think that would be one hell of a match. And honestly, that Philadelphia show is looking to be a stacked card because of the 4 matches that we have so far for that show. It is looking like a stacked card, and I'll get to that in a bit. But after this match, Michael Nakazawa, I guess, tried to do an interview with her in Japanese for the Japanese fans, and Rose decided to attack him after the match and nearly Kevin Nashed him. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, there was a jackknife powerbomb spot many years ago where Kevin Nash tried to powerbomb the Giant, who is now known as the Big Show. Couldn't quite get him up, and basically the Giant landed on the back of his neck and actually suffered a broken neck. So yeah, Rose botched the Beast Bomb, but let him back down, then muscled him back up and hit it. And then she tried to attack Rijo and do a Death Valley driver on the apron, but then Kenny Omega comes out and saves the day and gets Rijo out of harm's way, and he's basically like, what the hell are you doing? And so, for some that are wondering, why would Kenny Omega come out to save the day? Fun fact, when Kenny Omega was wrestling over in Japan, he would frequently be in intergender tag team matches, and he has gone on record to say that Rijo is his favorite tag team partner. And not only that, but in storyline, he was training Rijo for this match. So she was basically under his tutelage for this match. So that would be the other reason why he came out. And obviously in storyline it paid off because she's the champion now. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds going forward. And it's like, well, will Nyla Rose get a rematch? Probably not. Because if you don't count the Battle Royal victory, which I do, Nyla Rose is winless in AEW right now. She lost the Fatal 4-Way match, even though she was not involved in the decision. She was pinned by Rijo in the Triple Threat match, and then of course she lost this match. So if you do count the Battle Royal victory, she is 1-3 right now. And according to my rankings, she's not even in the top 10 at the moment. So I think they're going to have to build Nyla Rose back up because according to my rankings, she's nowhere near deserving another championship match at the moment. So that's probably one thing they'll do. They'll probably have her tear through the lower ranks to try to build herself back up and get another title shot further down the line. And also, I think she was kind of, cognizant of the fact that, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of people, that were going to be, very thrilled if she was the first champion. So she probably went to management and was like, look, I think she kind of realized that the fans weren't going to be on her side. And it's like, what, let's put the belt on Rijo. And I think that makes a lot more sense since they're more behind her. And of course we saw it from, the reaction when Rijo got that 3 count. The roof came off the fucking place. So if that doesn't tell you that she's over, then I don't know what the fuck will. Which brings us to our main event, and this one was all over the place. With a couple of big returns in the middle of it. Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz against the Elite, which comprised of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. Omega was not in this match very long, which I'll tell you in a minute. Highlights of the match: Omega's low drop kick was good. Also the Kotaro Crusher and his Frankensteiner. Jericho countered Omega's Frankensteiner into the walls of Jericho, but the Young Bucks come in with the super kick party, doing a double super kick to Jericho, and then super kicks to LAX that I'm going to refer to as for a bit. And then Nick Jackson does a corkscrew plancha to the outside on both Santana and Ortiz. And then the Young Bucks, motion to Kenny Omega to do, his thing. And then Jon Moxley comes out from the crowd and makes his return after having to sit out with a staph infection, a return of the MRSA staph infection in his elbow. But he is back, and he attacks Kenny Omega, and they both brawl to the back. Jericho actually hit a lariat on Matt Jackson at this point, I think. Omega and Moxley continue to fight in the back. Omega hits Moxley with a mop at one point, but Moxley then gains the upper hand and hits his Impaler double arm DDT, the paradigm shift, onto a glass table. And that looked like it hurt both of them. Omega, because it looked like he got spiked, and Moxley, because, they landed on a freaking wooden table and glass. That didn't look like it felt very good. So that pretty much took Omega out of the match. They go to commercial break. They come back from commercial, and it's now a 3-on-2 situation with the Young Bucks against Santana, Ortiz, and Jericho. Santana hit a nice little suplex. Matt with a back body drop and spear on both of the LAX members. Santana hits a crossbody, and then they start doing all these different dives, with Ortiz finishing it off with the dead man's drop for a 2 count. Ortiz hits a front slam, tags in Jericho, but Matt blocks the lion salt with his knees. Ortiz cuts Matt Jackson off from Nick, but then Matt hits a rolling diamond dust, and then does the locomotion northern suplexes, which includes both members of LAX at one point. Gets the hot tag to Nick, does all kinds of his, martial arts moves, including the tornado kick and the bulldog lariat combo, which was pretty good. Does a sky twister press to the outside, tags Matt in, and they go for, of course, their patented Meltzer driver, but Jericho counters Nick with the code breaker. LAX set Matt up in the corner where they hit like a cannonball splash, and Jericho got tagged in at this point, and then Jericho hits the Judas effect spinning back elbow on Matt for the 3 count and the victory. So Jericho remains undefeated in AEW, and Santana and Ortiz get their first tag team victory, because in 6-man tags, I'm going to make it to where they get a victory in their respective divisions. So Santana and Ortiz is part of the tag team division, and Jericho is part of the singles division, so they get respective victories in that. Afterwards, they start putting the boots to the Young Bucks. Cody comes down, starts fighting off Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz. Guevara comes out and kicks Cody in the nuts, and then Dustin Rhodes comes out and does the same to Guevara. And then we had our second, I wouldn't call it a return, it's more like a debut in AEW, but it's a return to professional wrestling of Jake Hager. There was someone who, as Dustin Rhodes was beating down Guevara, someone jumped in the ring and started attacking Dustin. I couldn't tell who it was at first, but then they gave us a better camera shot, and it's like, oh my god, that's Jake Hager, the man formerly known as the All-American Jack Swagger. And he is now in AEW, and he's now apparently part of this new heel faction that's formed from Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, Santana Ortiz, and Jake Hager. And they basically beat down the Elite. So it looks like we're going to have a faction war on our hands. And when you look at Jericho's group, he basically, fills out, everything. Of course, you have Jericho, the grizzled veteran who's the world champion. You have Sammy Guevara, the young high flyer. Santana Ortiz, one of the best tag teams in the world. And Jake Hager, the muscle. So I think that, it's a random assortment, but I think it rounds out, all the bases for a faction. Now, as far as a faction name, we don't know what one is yet. Although I would say Judas would probably be in that name somewhere. I think the Disciples of Judas would be a pretty good name for this faction. And they would go up against the Elite. So, this match was still pretty good despite, Jon Moxley's interference, which I'm not really a big fan of interferences. Although I get the context of it, considering that they are going to have their match at Full Gear. But I gave the main event a 3.75 stars out of 5. It was still pretty good. But as far as the show overall, those 2 hours flew by really quick. Like, I was super engaged in it. It's like, man, I haven't been this interested in a wrestling show in a long ass time. Because I remember when I used to be a huge fan of Monday Night Raw, but eventually it became background noise, and then I just eventually stopped watching it altogether because it just wasn't that interesting anymore. And now you have Wednesday Night Dynamite from All Elite Wrestling, and I just felt super engaged in it. You know what I mean? So overall, I'm going to give this show an 8 out of 10. There's still some things that got to work out. Like, that second match was not that good. And there were some botches here and there, but I mean, having Tony Schiavone on commentary was awesome with Jim Ross and Excalibur. I mean, that's the commentary team right there. That's it. Because they've been testing out different pieces. Because they've had JR and Excalibur on commentary for pretty much all the shows, and they've kind of had the third wheel, kind of interchanging it to see what would fit. Golden Boy seems like a good fit in some cases, but Tony Schiavone, I think, really brought it all together, in my opinion. The AEW Women's Championship match, of course, that was pretty cool, and of course the eruption that came from that building when Rijo got the 3 count, that was pretty cool. The return of Jon Moxley, the debut of Jake Hager, who's apparently undefeated in Bellator MMA, so that brings a little bit more legitimacy to him as far as AEW is concerned. And of course the crowd was chanting "We the People," which is obviously a play on his former gimmick in WWE when he was, the All-American American, former WWE World Heavyweight Champion, I might add. Is he going to be anything more than a mid-card act? Probably not. But, him in a supporting role, I think makes sense for him, though. Especially since he's 37 years old, so he's probably not going to be a part of professional wrestling for much longer. But needless to say, I think this is still a pretty good acquisition because, Jake Hager, he can do a lot of the power moves. I mean, he did a gut-wrench powerbomb on Dustin Rhodes onto a frickin' timekeeper stable. So there was that. So yeah, this show was pretty damn good, and honestly, those 2 hours flew by really quick. Like, they really did. So it left me wanting more. So it'd be interesting to see how this all plays out. And it's obvious that the television audience was engaged as well, especially when you consider that NXT is now directly across from them. And the ratings actually came out, the numbers came out for both shows. AEW was the clear winner this week. NXT had 891,000 viewers, whereas Wednesday Night Dynamite had 1.4 million. So while it's still not at the level of Raw or SmackDown yet, it was still TNT's biggest broadcast premiere of a show in 5 years. That's pretty big for them. And 1.4 million people, that's still a lot of fucking people, no matter how you slice the pie. So it'll be interesting to see what the ratings will be next week in Boston. But I got a feeling Philadelphia is going to be pretty lit because of the quality of matches that are going to be on that show, which we're going to go ahead and talk about right now since, the review's done. I've given my rating and everything. So let's move ahead and see what we're going to be looking forward to in the coming weeks. Part of which is the World Tag Team Title Tournament. They unveiled the rankings. First of all, speaking of the tag team titles, there should be a picture up on the screen at the moment with the tag team title belts, and let me tell you something, man. they are doing a really good job with the championship belts in AEW right now. When they unveiled the AEW World Championship, I was like, oh wow, that looks really cool. It definitely has a UFC look to it as well. The AEW Women's World Championship, they could have done a little bit bigger. I mean, the plates themselves actually look pretty good, because they actually look like championship belts. They could have made it a little bit bigger, because it was a bit smaller than I was expecting. But they've also unveiled the AEW World Tag Team Championship belts, and oh my goodness, those belts look really good. I mean, they have the AEW logo in the center with a picture of the world. They have blue end line in the center, which looks really cool. And it also says World Tag Team Champion. And on the side plates, they have someone getting a pile driver. And it actually looks like a cradle pile driver with the All Elite Wrestling logo there as well. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the championship belts for the tag team division look really cool. And it'll be interesting to see who will be the first to hoist those belts. From the tag team title tournament, the bracket should be up on screen right for you right now. 7 teams going for the championship. Of course, Dark Order got the bye from their victory at All Out. But the tag team title tournament will begin in Boston this coming week. And the first match is the Young Bucks against Private Party. And if you've seen Private Party perform on AEW in the past, and you know the Young Bucks, this is going to be one hell of an opening match to the tag team title tournament. I do expect the Young Bucks to win because experience, but also for what's going to be going down on the next show, which is Philadelphia on October the 16th. And I said that this show was going to be stacked, and here's why. In addition to the 2 championship matches, the first defense of the Women's World Championship and the first defense of the Men's World Championship, the last 2 matches of the first round of the tag team title tournament will also be taking place. And this is one of them, holy shit, this is going to be one of them kind of deals. On the right side of the bracket, we have the Best Friends taking on SCU. And we've seen in the past how good those 2 tag teams are. They're going to be in this. But of course, this may or may not be the main event of the show because of how stupidly popular these 2 teams are. The Lucha Brothers against Jurassic Express, a boy and his dinosaur, Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. That match is going to be lit as fuck. And even though we're going to see the first defense of the AEW Men's World Championship with Chris Jericho defending, I honestly believe that this may or may not be the main event of this show because, I mean, the Lucha Brothers and Jurassic Express, these are 2 of the most popular tag teams in the company. So I have a feeling they may make this the main event of that show. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me, and I wouldn't blame them. I mean, these are 2 of, the most popular tag teams in the company. And one thing they might also do with this tournament is they actually may crown Jurassic Express the tag team champions. Even though they've not won a match in AEW yet, I think they're going to have them go on a run and also legitimize them by beating the Lucha Brothers and then beating the Young Bucks in Pittsburgh, which will be where the semifinals take place, both of the semifinal matches, where Dark Order takes on the winner of the Best Friends and SCU. I think Dark Order will win that one. And then the finals will be on October 30th in Charleston, West Virginia. And I think it'll be Jurassic Express against the Dark Order. The Dark Order, formerly the Super Smash Brothers, they haven't really been over as heels. I mean, they've been met by a lot of confusion from the crowd. So they haven't been really getting over as heels, but if they're opposite Jurassic Express, I think that'll finally come out. So I think that'll benefit them as well as heels. And can you imagine the reaction if Jurassic Express became the inaugural AEW World Tag Team Champions, the roof would come off the fucking place. You know, and it would also legitimize them because they would beat the Lucha Brothers, the Young Bucks, who've had their wars in AEW as well, fighting for the AAA Tag Team Championships, and then defeating Dark Order in the final, another great tag team. I mean, that would super legitimize Jurassic Express. And as popular as they are, it would make the most sense to me. So that is the gist of it for this week. And look at that, less than an hour this time. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise that this review is a little bit shorter. That's pretty much going to do it for this week. Thank you very much for watching. And of course, on next week's review, I will be covering the dark matches that took place on this show. And also what happened on the Boston show. So that'll be interesting to see. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. Bye.
Well, that is all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to rate, comment, favorite, like, and subscribe to my channels here on YouTube.com and over on BitChute.com. If you would like to sponsor my channel, go to my channel page at subscribestar.com. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan, signing out. Have a good one.